Hi everybody and welcome. Today we're going to be looking at Unit 4 review questions. So your goal after watching this video will be able to review the 5 lessons that we did in Unit 4, those 5 different skills. So starting off with the first one, focusing in on imaginary numbers and negatives and square roots. A reminder, if you ever see a negative and a square root, the first thing we want to do here is take a -1 out, and then we can factor it like we normally would. So for example, with 80, maybe we can do something like, 2 times 40. And then keep breaking this down by 2's. Once we do this, again, still looking for pairs just like we've been doing. Let's see what we got. We have 1 pair of 2, 2 pairs of 2's. And again, the root of -1 is just equal to I. So in this case here, we can take things out that we have. So we have 2 2's that we can take out. Right here and right here. We can take out the I term right here, and all alone by itself we have 5, so that stays inside of the root. So our final answer for this one is 4 times I times the square root of 5. Going to want to do the same thing here. Again, first things first, take that -1 out, and then factor it out like you normally would for the square roots. Next, things that we can do with these, again, simplifying complex expressions. Want to make sure that we are going through carefully one at a time and matching up those like terms where we have like terms. This is minus, so we want to distribute that in. So we have 3 plus 2i minus 13, and then plus 7i. Things that are similar, 3 and minus 13 gets us a -10. And again, things that are also similar, I'll use a squiggly line here, +2 and +7 leaves us with 9i. The next one is a little bit different here. We are multiplying. So we'll end up with 8i squared minus 18i. Now these are not like terms, and a quick thing that we need to remember here, I squared, that's the root of -1 times the root of -1, or simply just -1 because those roots cancel. So important to remember here, we're left with -8 minus 18i. So again, fully simplify things out. Just I is totally fine. We can't get any more simple than that. But anything else, we do need to remember our table. And again, remember, we just have I squared is -1, I to the 3rd power is -I, and I to the 4th power gives us +1. So again, if we ever see any of these 4 things that are highlighted here, we need to make sure that we are simplifying to the most reduced form possible. Next, solving the quadratic when it is equal to 0. So again, setting up our box for something like this, x squared and 20. List out those factors of 20. So we have things like 5 and 4. If we add it, it does equal 9, which does match our center terms. We are happy with 5 and 4. Always want to check, though, when we do this going across, they add to get 9, and they do multiply to get 20. So we're left with x plus 5 times x plus 4 equals 0. In that last step, we want to break these down and set individually each of these pieces equal to 0 because of that 0 product property. So subtract 5 from both sides, subtract 4 from both sides, and our x-intercepts are -5 and -4. So that covers about our first 3 skills. So we're going to keep going here on to the 4th and 5th ones. So quadratic formula, a reminder about this, minus b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a, and it needs to be in the form ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0 in order to do any solving here. So please make sure that it equals 0. Again, this does not equal 0, so we can't do anything with that yet in terms of a, b, and c. First steps, a equals, b equals, keep the negatives with them, and c equals. Once we do that, we start plugging in. And again, do not forget this negative on the outside here, -b plus or minus square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. And I realize I should be doing these parentheses instead. Let's fix that up. So b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Being careful to plug in the correct values here. And then we can go through again one at a time and do these. So 2 negatives here, cancel to get us +8. Negative 8 squared is positive 64. We have a negative 4, and we have a negative 12. So that's actually both going to cancel there and get us positive. And again, I want to do these in our calculator, make sure we're not missing any steps here. So we got, what is that? 12 times 12, positive 144. And all of that is over 6. So again, add up all of our terms here. So we got 144 and 64 in here. So 8 plus or minus the square root of 208 all over 6. And when we get to the situation, again, we're going to want to break this down into our positive and our negative. And I'll let us finish this up in terms of the simplifying, but 8 plus the root of 208 all over 6, and then 8 minus the root of 208 all over 6. Simplify the root of 208 as far as you can. If we're graphing, we are going to need to put that in decimal form. If it's a multiple choice answer on the SAT or ACT, we would be breaking that down. So listing out all the factors of 208 and getting it as simple as possible. I would get 1 or 2 steps away, so I'll leave this one here for you to finish. The discriminant, that is b squared minus 4ac. A reminder about the discriminant, so we still need to find a, b, and c. If our discriminant is positive, then we're looking at 2 solutions. If our discriminant is 0, we have 1 solution. And if our discriminant is negative, that's going to be imaginary or no real solutions here. So a couple things to remember about that lecture. Make sure we are up to date on the vocab of the discriminant and the key points we can take away from that. Final thing here, graphing. So x-intercepts, for this equation, we would want to use the quadratic formula because that a term is pretty big there with a 4. So a, b, and c, 4 minus 1 minus 14. Plug that in and get x equals and x equals. Next, the y-intercept is when we plug in x equals 0 into our equation, and we're going to get that y value when we do that is just minus 14. We can see that again as the number alone without any variables next to it. So our y-intercept here is 0 comma minus 14. The vertex of this, if we remember that vertex form, is minus b over 2a. So again, we can use our b and our a to find our vertex. That's the x value. Our y value, we would take that value and plug it back into 4x squared minus x minus 14. And then finally, the axis of symmetry is just literally x equals from up here. So we would take this same x value and bring it down there for the axis of symmetry. All of these things together will allow us to, on our test, graph our parabola. So we'd have our intercepts, we'd have our axis of symmetry, we'd have our vertex. All of those things together allow us to draw a sketch of that graph. We already need to label all 4 of these things on that graph and use them basically to make that graph. All right, so a bit of a quick overview of some of these skills here. Hopefully this gives you the framework of how to set up questions like this, of how to practice. I intentionally did not finish this because I want you to finish it before you upload those pictures and submit them. As always, any questions, please let me know. Book an appointment in classroom. I'll see you in Teams soon. Send an email message, any of those things. We are here to support. And again, as always, everybody, thanks so much for tuning in. I'll see you in Teams.